Hello,
I love
everyone.
this voice.
Yeah, it's great. So this is the memory meeting we created to record our meeting, and we forgot to, so you're missing 10 minutes of content. For those that are coming in, we essentially are discussing some sort of organizational questions of where we're tracking issues and how to ensure that we're not missing any items going forward.
So Fabian, like my proposal will be that like we work these topics from this 2 Geek week. I completely agree with Matthias on creating like the follow-up issues in this epic that you have right now. And as a conclusion of this 2 Geek focus epic, I would simply propose that we close it once we work it, like, to kind of indicate that this is like done.
Yeah, and I think if I understand correctly, the intention here is just to go through this now and say, have we captured it appropriately or have we forgotten about it? And if we have forgotten about it, we can create a follow-up issue in here.
Or we don't want to capture that because it doesn't make sense.
Correct.
This is like the third option.
Cool. Should we just do it swiftly? Maybe Camille, you can go through this. Oh, thank you. I'm getting a coffee delivery, so.
Can you just read the topic and probably like just read the topic, like the one that is like the top bullet point. Okay, this photo, like this is what we are using. Copy and write flagging in MRI. Matthias, like you work on that. Is it something that like we should follow up? Is it
no? I have not worked on this. This is like something that came up out of a thread on Twitter. I thought it sounded like a super interesting idea, and I tried to poke that person for more information, and they never followed up with anything actionable. He was an Airbnb engineer, and apparently they're working on a custom Ruby VM fork that supports this. And I thought I'd just like bring it up prior to the week in case anything actionable falls out of it, but it never did. So I have no idea how it works, how it would work, and I have no like lead, so I don't think it's something.
I'm just curious because like we did a lot of other preloading. Is it still like worth investigating in the future? Maybe with the high uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really experimental thing, right? Because I mean, it would require really intimate knowledge of the Ruby VM. Like this would be something we'd have to write in C in the Ruby VM.
Okay. So you say rather no at this moment.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to keep the idea around, and let's also keep, because maybe here's the thing. I mean, they are working on this. Like maybe we don't need to replicate this work. So let's just keep it on the radar. Maybe we don't have to work on it. Maybe Airbnb will say, hey, we sent a patch back upstream. Maybe it will be in Ruby core for Ruby 3. Who knows?
Okay, but that feels to me like something that's exciting, but in the future, but not actionable right now. We can leave it.
Okay, yes, I agree. Let's leave it.
Copy on write flagging in MRI.
Yes, let's leave this one out.
Okay. Investigate used gems.
So we actually have finding mechanisms to dynamically load gems, which is probably like the very good reflection of this topic.
Cool.
Right?
Yes, we did, and we have an issue where we will try dynamically to load not just gems, but the code itself. We will see how it goes, but I think it's covered.
Investigation more. Yes, please.
So this is covered, we can move on.
Yeah.
Investigate memory content.
This is tricky because like we had these strings aspects, so this is reflected. But Matthias, I also saw that you mentioned these empty hashes. Is it something that like we aim to pursue, or is it like that end?
Yeah, so the empty hashes thing, it's not that much, it's like a couple megabyte. Might not be worth doing. There was like another suggestion that Peter, I think, mentioned.
I mean, couple megabytes seems like a lot, really.
Yeah, maybe. Well, yeah, maybe you're right. In sum total, like with other things. Yeah, okay, it's a fair point. We could do it. And the question is, it's not clear like where these allocations come from. So we don't even know. So in terms of the rice stuff, I certainly don't have 100% confidence that we'll be able to fix them all, right?
Yeah. But is this reflected in an issue that we should stack rank, or should we add it to our list?
I don't think we have an issue for this. Maybe I underestimated the impact, so maybe we can create an issue for this.
I mean, like to give you the perspective, like the string.dat application, maybe we give like around 5 megabytes in total per process.
Okay.
So now if we have the hashes that give us 3 or 5 megabytes, like it kind of makes, let's say, noticeable impact across the fleet.
Yeah, and there were actually two aspects that came out of this. That because the hashes, that was only one thing. There were also just a bunch of other just really, the empty hashes were only like one thing. There were a bunch of other hashes that were just quite large, where we would have to still follow up on like what that is and if that is something we can shrink or get rid of. There was one, and I think for that other one, we do have an issue somewhere. Let me check. Which was, I think Craig might have created it actually, which was the review Unicode hashes that end up in memory. There's like this big JSON file that we load into memory, which is like also like 2 to 3 megabyte, I think it was, or 1.5, something like that. That contains the Unicode mapping, which I think we use in the front end somewhere. Something we could look into as well. It's just not clear whether this is something we can just get rid of. I mean, that's probably a reason why we need to make this available. But yeah, that's another story that came out of this. So this parent topic here, investigate memory content, was really just us looking at, taking a heap dump and looking at what is in memory at any given point in time. And then there was some things that looked like maybe we can shrink that.
Okay, do we have these concrete steps covered somewhere, as in? Yeah,
so the last one I just mentioned, we have an issue for this. Let me double check whether that is in the list of issues in the rice. Hang on. Yeah, it's not in that list. So I'm like adding a comment here around things that are not in that list, and then maybe we can create a new one for the empty hashes separately, because I think those need to be tackled separately.
I'm also wondering, like, we covered this with help of Igor, like visualization of gemalog thing and like making it readable at least, but it's still a lot of data and we didn't conclude anything. But maybe if we look into more details and into the smaller scale, we can maybe.
You mean the JEmalloc stuff?
Yes, yes. So I'm not sure like if it's worth like pursuing further or not.
I mean, I looked at it for a while, and my conclusion was what we're seeing here is the Ruby VM allocating. Most of the time was spent, or most of the allocs were spent on allocating Ruby heap pages. Well, yeah, which we need to do if we consume a lot of memory. So I didn't find it super enlightening to look at these. Yeah. But maybe someone else can have another step, take another step at this.
Okay, so this situation.
I'm gonna create an issue like for these empty hashes with some like a few words. So like if you could, Matthias, then extend it further.
Can we move on to the next epic? I'm just trying to move it along because we have a very long list of topics.
Yeah.
Try to hack Spring to run in production in Omnibus. And Alexei, just for your context, we're trying to ensure here that everything that is covered in those topics is reflected in the other issue for stack ranking, just making sure we're not forgetting anything.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm not sure if it's even like feasible that we ever gonna do it. Like it brings like the memory benefits of like running from the common process, but there is like still a lot of aspects that I don't understand why a lot of copy on write happening when you Puma process, basically. So I'm kind of like, yes, like it's beneficial on one hand. On the second hand, like it's with the high uncertainty if it can be done well, because like like the signal handling and like all aspects, copy and write being not the best as well, so it needs further investigation. But also like the impact is, it's tricky because we're not gonna run that way for the big for the big installations. We may only decide to run that way for very small GitLabs installation, because it's not really like very desired way to run GitLab from like the single parent in the big instance. Like in the cloud native, we split the processes even further. So I'm kind of got to the point thinking that like it doesn't make sense to pursue that aspect at all, because like its usability is very limited to only very small installations, because in all other cases we're not gonna run that way. It just doesn't make sense. I'm kind of thinking that like, yes, it gives benefits. It requires a lot of more investigation why these benefits are so small right now, because they should be significantly larger. But on the other hand, like, it's pretty complex, and I'm not sure if we would ever want to support that way. That's my issue with that.
Yeah. To me, that sounds like too large and too undefined with too much uncertainty to, continue.
I mean, like it's maybe. I mean, this would be maybe not a problem if you would see like a very big benefit that would have the very high reach, but I kind of consider the reach to be very minimal in this case, because you would use that as a last resort only in a very specific circumstances. We would not use that in general. That's my issue with that. So I'm kind of thinking that like, since the reach is very small, and all of these other aspects make it kind of like, I'm not sure if it even makes sense to invest more time into it now.
Do people agree with that? Okay. Can I move on?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Check the impact of swap.
So I was playing with different swap settings, but it's not really about like anything that would improve GitLab performance. It's more like maybe ensuring like the same defaults for these constraint installations, what amounts of the swap you should be using and in what circumstances. So it's more like the documentation output that we may, I mean, Fabian, we may even like consider this to be like the bullet point in like rehaul of the running GitLab on the constraint environment, something that we discussed on the Monday, because like this documentation that they mentions Raspberry Pi, but maybe we want to rehaul this documentation to discuss how to configure GitLab for the 2 gig installations, and this could be like one of the bullet points how the swap should be used as well. So maybe our issue here, output of that should be like rehaul the memory running GitLab on the constraint environments documentation, and this being like one of the aspects that we should maybe cover. But I'm not thinking that this is much bigger than that.
Okay, so it's more of a documentation issue at this point. Do we need to capture that somewhere else?
I'm gonna create this documentation issue, because maybe like as part of this price framework, documentation is also important.
Yeah, no, the documentation is absolutely fair game.
Like, it could be actually like the very first step before everything, really, to ensure that we have documentation reflecting the current state.
Yeah, no, please. I think then we can add it to the list. Okay. Next one, Puma in single mode.
Yeah, Alexi worked on this. I already took note that I'm not sure if we have an issue for this already, but it's definitely something we should look at. We might just have to create a new issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I think both me and Camille, we tried like to run Puma in single mode, and it was like very effective. Like I found it most effective for constrained instances, even more effective than Nakayashi fork. far as I
Okay, so
remember.
is this reflected in the RISE issue list?
No, I guess no.
Okay.
We need
Cool.
to open an issue.
Yeah, great. Then we should make a note of that.
Mhm.
Try to share ISAC.
I started to look at that, but I didn't do anything meaningful. So I'm kind of considering this at this moment that it's pretty complex to do.
Okay.
I actually had a question. We don't have to get too deep, but isn't this completely covered by copy on write anyway? Because ISAC is never gonna, they're never gonna change, right? So this should just be shared memory for anything that pre-forks.
Yes, like the pre-fork will work, but the tricky part about that aspect that I was thinking about is like, if you can share ISAC as part of, let's say, memory mapped file, this would be as well shared between different distinct processes. So
Yeah,
like,
okay. I see what you mean.
if you run like in the Kubernetes world, if you would run from the same container image from the same file that is in the container, it would be shared across different processes and not use too much memory as well. So it was like another way of thinking on ensuring that these 250 megabytes of the let's say Ruby code that we load can be effectively shared with the system buffers basically across different processes that also works in the Kubernetes world. I just didn't get to actually doing that, but it still feels feasible, just it's pretty complex to do. And it requires a lot of changing in the Ruby VM, and I'm unsure exactly yet what would have to change. I'm just sure that it's possible. It's complex.
So do we need to capture this, or is it one of those things that is maybe for now not completely relevant?
It sounds a little bit like the copy and write flagging. It's maybe a bit of a moonshot to do it short term, but it sounds like a really cool idea.
Okay.
It sounds like a really cool idea, but I think it's a lot of uncertainty, but potentially it has very high reach. So I'm unsure exactly how to tackle that, but it's
Are
pretty
those things
complex.
topic that might be better to bring up not inside GitLab, but more rather inside the Ruby core community?
I mean, like, yes, like in general, it would have to be upstreamed. But first, like, it would help to actually investigate if it's actually effective. So GitLab codebase could be a good way to prototype if it's actually effective. So try to load parts of the application. I think it's reflected. One is Matthias' issue, which is about games. And the second one is like that one that I created yesterday about loading application using context in which it's running.
Okay, great. Try to run GitLab on JRuby.
I think we didn't even try that, and that's why we didn't create an issue, because there was an argument that we're losing too much expertise, like with moving to Java-based Ruby, which I agree personally.
Yeah, there's a bunch of issues with doing this. There's also problems with native extensions and all that.
Okay, so I'm going to let that one go. Puma 50.x.
Yes, we have an issue, but it's kind of included in Nakayashi fork. I didn't notice any in GC compact issue, which will be Nakayashi fork, because I didn't notice any specific with Puma update itself when I played with it. So currently we're updating Puma, it's our priority, but it will result in GC compacting.
Okay, so we
yeah,
have that covered.
There is one aspect. There is one aspect of the 5.x that is new, which is like worker refork.
It's kind of broken, Camille. I tried it, but I've seen a lot of issues, even non-fixed ones, No, I could send you a link. It's very broken.
Okay.
So
it's not something that we can really use.
No. I've seen like there are still open issues here.
Sorry,
Oh.
like I didn't quite get that.
I tried worker fork. I could like discuss it later.
So I didn't quite get it. Do we need to open an issue, or is this covered?
No, I think it's like kind of it will be done by closing the issue GC compact.
Okay.
So yeah.
Super. Ruby 2.7.
Yeah, that was just a parent theme because we're already on Ruby 2.7, but we weren't necessarily taking full advantage of it, maybe. So there's a bunch of things. Like what I looked at was GC compaction. There was an issue. There was even an MR, but we decided to close it because Puma, what is it, 5.1 or 5.0? I got confused at some point with the versioning, but like whatever Puma version we're not on yet, the one that we're looking to get onto actually has a config switch you can just toggle, which actually does this for us, compacting the heap before we fork into workers.
Yep.
So we decided to just not do it manually, but just do it by upgrading to Puma with the new Puma version, which has other benefits.
Okay, but we do have that covered in issues.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, there is an ongoing. Alexis, you're working on this, right? The 5.1 bump or?
Yeah. I sent to the chat like there is an issue for
Okay.
Puma 5.1. I created it like a separate issue, but it's like acts as a prerequisite for this 2.7 compaction stuff.
Okay, so investigate a big difference between idle and runtime memory.
I mean, like, I was able to partially investigate it, but there is like nothing really interesting that I did found on it yet. Probably, at least from my perspective, it would require more time to like maybe look at these MRI flags that Matthias mentioned. Maybe like try to attribute memory allocations that we talked somewhere else. So it has potential high impact, but like I'm not sure exactly why this memory is still like increasing so significantly.
Okay. So should we let that one go?
I'm not sure, like Nicola, Matthias, do you think that this is something that we should continue investigating?
Idle and runtime memory?
Yes, because like there's like quite a difference between like idle and the runtime that also impacts copy and write.
It sounds to me like that's just the result of, the application consuming more memory over time or like mutating areas in memory. I don't know, like, I don't know, I can't say, I didn't look into this at all. It sounds like this is probably due to a billion reasons. I don't think there will be a single thing that falls out of this where we can say, well, that's
so one of the aspects, but I didn't really test that in the end, if this is also affects, because like tuning GC parameters being pretty aggressive, I actually reached to the having pretty constant memory usage over time instead of the growing memory usage. So maybe like these GC settings also affects this idle and runtime memory. I just didn't investigate that.
Well, I looked at it from the I looked at it from the copy and write angle and how much we can, or the compaction, when I worked on the compaction stuff. So what I saw was the amount of pages we share as like when the system is idle is quite good. But as soon as you put it under load, that deteriorates completely. Like it will almost, that effect will, like deteriorate. You're right, completely. So yeah, I don't know why that is, but yeah, it's clearly visible. That is probably just the same thing you saw there. I don't know what you looked at exactly. But yeah, it's just because the application mutates a lot of memory as it does its thing, whatever that is. It's probably.
I mean, like at least from my perspective, it could be the outcome of like application raised the initializing, and I'm aiming to figure out exactly which code paths are still executed like after starting server, but before, like in the time after starting server and processing a first request, to actually to see like what are the CPU cycles we are using that for. But also you mentioned about the memory allocation, and like I found that like making GC pretty aggressive and JMalloc pretty aggressive makes it to actually like allocate less amount of the memory, because like in the default setting we would allocate a ton of memory that we would never free, and we would only keep allocating more and more and more over time.
Yeah, I also wonder if it could be because of meta programming stuff, where you go back and define methods after the fact if you hit a certain endpoint and stuff like that, so that whole class hierarchies that could be shared previously are not shareable anymore. Could be another reason.
My suggestion here would be, it sounds like there's still a little bit to talk about, right? But it sounds like there is investigation potential, right? But it's not something that we may need to do right now. So maybe it's worthwhile opening an issue to at least not forget about this, right? But I'm not sure it needs to happen sort of next.
Fabian, maybe my proposal would be, because like I'm pretty certain that GC settings we already is reflected, and the other angle that we may want to investigate is like, is there aspects that we may optimize between forking and processing a first requests, because this is something that may be affecting that. So maybe I'm just gonna create an issue to measure this particular aspect, which is like, I guess like we have then like two aspects that do affect this topic, which is one aspect is like GC settings and JMalloc settings that impact memory usage. But the second is exactly what is happening between forking and processing a request. Initially.
Okay, is that something that we should capture in the stack ranking for RISE as well?
I think so. It's still like, it's just a store. It's still like a ranking. So
yep, exactly. Cool.
It may end up like like at the end place of the list, basically.
Yeah, but it's still in the list then, right? Cool. Okay, measure the size of features. That uses language I can appreciate a little bit more.
So this ended up making into the list through a slightly different issue, but we have it covered. We only have ideas currently for how to do. Did you end up looking into this, Nicola?
No, I didn't. Like, if you think about like marking and coloring thing, I didn't.
Yeah, that was the idea. We came up with a little later.
I was more looking about how to dynamically load the files and the gems.
Yeah. So anyway, this was part of the RISE thing. We just don't have, it's tricky. We have a couple ideas for how to go about it, but we haven't done anything specific.
Cool. Okay, then I'll move on. Disable unneeded services in Omnibus.
Yeah, that is covered because we have, actually, let me check. Okay, so in the RISE list of issues, we had the GitLab exporter thing, which was only one of those components. And I don't know if Camille had any other ideas. And then I expanded that specific one into all of monitoring, because there's a bunch of other systems that came up as part of the default monitoring settings that we enable. But that's as far as I went in terms of that. So I don't know, because I think Camille, you looked at this as well, right? I don't know if there was anything else I missed that we need issues for.
I'm not sure if there is like anything else that we can disable to make actually still continue, make GitLab still to continue to work. And from these aux services, it's basically all the monitoring ones, because like, at least for the Postgres, we may optimize memory buffers for the Redis as well, and like for the other services as well. But this optimization is reflected like optimize GC and memory settings of the all other services. So I think
it's also
like your issue is probably very well reflects what exactly we may do, but like you talk about dropping, but do we need an issue like
GitLab exporter? I'm not talking about dropping monitoring, just the GitLab exporter because it's deprecated anyway. But in terms of monitoring, I was suggesting, and that's really a product decision in the end, is to not enable it by default on for every customer in every environment. Because I'm not sure, I don't have any data to base this on, but if I was running a very small single node GitLab deployment for, like a few dozen users, do I need Grafana to monitor that system? It sounds a little bit excessive. I mean, the request volume will be so low, like there's basically nothing to look at. Right?
I would still say that we should enable it by default because like small instances is extreme, but I believe Camille mentions that we could dynamically detect such small constrained instances and disable it for them by default.
Well, that's what I mean with disabling by default. Like Omnibus has defaults, and then they can be, it's based on templates, so they can contain logic. I mean, that's what we do for the Puma worker defaults. We size them based on how many cores you have and stuff. So
do we have an issue that reflects that discussion? Because I think that's a worthy discussion to have.
Yes, let me check if it was in the RISE list, because that's the stuff I'm working on this week, so it's quite new. No, it's not in the RISE list. So I generalized the one up about dropping GitLab exporter, which was in the RISE list, to revisit. And honestly, this is not something like the engineers can really work on because it's the feature decision. I think it's something product managers need to look at. But there is an issue, I can mention it in the comment that I broke out, which is, sorry, I'm trying.
Maybe I'm kind of thinking maybe one aspect that we may work on is like add a function to Omnibus that detects that you're running in the constrained environment, which may be defined by the two factors, amount of the CPU and amount of the RAM, and automatically disable these functions and print like a big warning message like that this is disabled, but you can like override this disable and still continue running if you want to. So kind of have a way that like we run sane by default and make it like part of the Omnibus that like we detect this constraint condition.
So my very high level thought on like how we can probably go about it, and that's just on my limited information, is I think first, doing or making changes that are essentially efficiency improvements for everybody, right? So where, dropping GitLab exporter because it's deprecated and uses 300 megabytes of RAM overall is great, especially if no functionality changes, right? It's just being more efficient. And I think there are quite a few things that can be done in that class. When that is more or less exhausted, I like the idea of considering sort of saying, oh, you are running in a memory constrained environment. We have a way of detecting it. And then we change some of the behavior because we assume that certain things are not needed or may save some memory because we know about it, right? And then if that is considered not enough, sort of the most extreme step following that would be to say, let's disable certain things in the application that have a user impact, right? Because we know they're very memory intensive and they're not available to you, right? But this is sort of there's a product decision gradient, right? The taking features away from people because they are running on a memory constrained environment is quite drastic, right? And I think we would like to have people use everything if possible. That's sort of my two cents on that.
So like we discovered that at least like running in the Puma single and like disabling all these monitoring services that Matthias mentioned, it actually frees a lot of memory that we could use for GitLab. So it still doesn't degrade GitLab, I mean the product,
yes,
but degrade some aspects of the monitoring functions of the GitLab. So maybe it's still like a good trade-off in this case, and like the lowest friction.
But we can discuss that in more detail. I'm just being mindful of time, so maybe we can make our way forward.
I'm actually creating issue to discuss this omnibus aspect.
Thank you. Disable just-in-time compilers.
I think there was I might have created this, but I might have been confused around the direction of this. I think it is disabled by default. Because it's very strange, like apparently Rails is slower with JIT enabled for some reason, because the overhead of JIT is apparently not. Long story short, unless someone disagrees, it doesn't sound worth looking into, because I think Ruby core people or Rails core people have already investigated that and said that JIT is not something you should be doing.
I mean, like I read the mention that Ruby 3.0 makes, if one uses JIT, like it's 3 times faster. So I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, but Ruby 3 is not a thing yet, right? So
probably we need to validate that ourselves, if JIT is faster or slower with the Ruby 3.0 happening.
I'm not sure what the conclusion is from that statement.
I mean,
we'll wait for Ruby 3.0.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
can put it on hold for now.
Cool.
You can skip this one as well. That was just Camille wanted to create a benchmark test result or suite that we can compare against. So there's nothing to do.
Do we have that?
Actually, it would be amazing. I would think that we could maybe catch this sort of in an issue, because when we will be going forward with our improvements, it would be great to compare against some stand or.
Why do we need an issue for this? It's already done, right? We can just refer to these results.
We have baseline
so
performance.
There is one aspect, like, but this is more like the quality thing. Like maybe the quality testing should have like one of these more constrained environment with the smaller amount of the RPS that we are constantly testing.
I think that's a good suggestion. My question is similar to, I think, Alexei's. Do we actually have a way to quickly evaluate what our baseline is? And are we able to then assess how our improvements that we're going to make are going to compare against that baseline?
Like we have all these like our receipts for this 2 gig week, but it's still like semi-manual process.
Okay, so but we can do it. We may want to make it more automated and.
But it's not very streamlined if you ask about it. It's not that like we ship change and we can, let's say, like in another 1 or 2 hours run some kind of automated testing suite and like automated environment creation that would give us like comprehensive information that is not biased by any specific week of our configuration that we might apply.
I mean, is this something we could work with the QA engineering together on?
I'm kind of thinking that this is exactly what we should do, like introduce like this very small constraint reference architecture that we may not announce, but we may be testing to see exactly how it changes over time.
I think that should at least be discussed, because I think that would allow us to really sort of track ourselves against something. And if that's hard to do, from my experience, that will sometimes not happen because it is just time intensive and other things pop up. Okay. Is this something that, I guess this is more of a collaborative effort at this point. So we should capture that we want to do it, but I'm not sure we need to stack rank it for immediate activities.
Alexei, would you mind creating issue maybe for that? I'm just creating a ton of other ones.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Figure out what holds memory.
That sounds like we already covered that.
Cool.
Sounds like duplicate.
Yeah, GC parameters.
I think there are issues.
Okay, string deduplication.
That's covered too.
GitLab metrics instrumentation.
Oh wait, was that in Rice? Did we? I think we do have an issue, but I'm not sure we actually voted on that. Did we?
We didn't.
Oh damn! Missed half of it.
It's okay. I mean, it was a good suggestion to go through this so that we don't forget stuff, and we can add.
We do have an issue though. I'll add it to the list.
Cool. Remove Prometheus metrics.
Yes, I'm kind of like noticed myself that like our Prometheus integration can consume a lot of memory because of a lot of cardinality mapping and things like that. And actually I was able to free a few, or maybe like 10 or 15 megabytes of the memory just removing Prometheus. So it may be, I think, worth for us to take a look exactly how it works and whether we can optimize that, basically this Prometheus integration to have smaller memory footprint. It's gonna be probably required anyway because of the Puma single mode. Because our Prometheus metrics use Ruby GVL, block on the Ruby GVL, and like it makes it very bad for the performance aspect. So maybe it's not remove Prometheus metrics, but figure out a way to make it more efficient, and maybe figure out to move away from our fork of the Prometheus client as well. So,
do we have an issue for that?
I think that we had some issue. I'm just not sure. I'm likely gonna create another issue like with this specific aspect, and then we can maybe link to the issue from the monitor team. But it kind of gives me a perspective that it's actually we can free maybe 20, 30, 40 megabytes on big GitLab installation per a single worker, basically, that would otherwise be consumed. So I'm kind of thinking that it's gonna give us a lot of room more.
Okay, so you're going to action that one. Tune GC params of all other Ruby processes.
I think we have an issue for this, right? I think
Yeah, it's covered.
Yeah.
Covered. Discover unused code.
Yes, I don't have issue for that. I was thinking that maybe we could add a very simple addition to the Ruby VM that would pin each method that was executed ever as part of the stack, and then kind of gather metrics to understand which methods were not ever executed as part of the execution to see the application load and maybe see if there are parts of the GitLab or parts of the gem that we still load, but they are not used. I just didn't.
There a gem which does it, like coverage stuff, I believe. They don't recommend to use it in production, but they have this feature when they show coverage of each.
But like Ruby is a dynamic language, right? How do you even discover that? Because things might be loaded lazily. If you have like a test suite that does not instrument a certain path,
no,
you would
in
never
production,
even discover that.
Over video, yes, only that. Like,
yeah.
I was thinking that in the context of getting this breakdown from the production. So good coverage works, but it's super slow actually to run that on the production. And I was thinking that I could simply add a single byte for each I seek. And basically this is the way how I could very cheaply track if something was ever executed or not. And then like you would iterate just an objects, and each method has like a place where it's allocated. It doesn't mean that we would catch all methods because, as you are saying, like we are lazy loading some aspects. But even like from the existing code that we loaded, we could see exactly if there are methods that we are never executing in some contexts. And Camille, this was like my idea of that.
Yeah. Could we make this part of, because we already have a story for tracking memory used based on features, which would require us to hook into, like create trace points or something to find out what's actually going on in terms of code that we load. Maybe we can kill two birds with one stone there and track also, other symbols that are never being accessed. It sounds like a very similar task somehow.
It's similar but different, but probably from the same category. So the question is like, do we need a category of saying attribute memory usage to the groups, because then like you have the attribution of the runtime allocation of the memory, and you have attribution of the code being loaded to the group. So I'm not sure, like, Matthias, can you handle that and like figure out how to like make it nice with the issues?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, last thing. Extend Ruby VM to provide the detailed GC compacting details. I think we have that too, don't we?
I have some parts. It works. I'm unsure if it actually makes sense to create an issue for that.
Okay.
It gives us more visibility, but it doesn't really make us do anything more meaningful in terms of the memory reduction.
Okay, cool. Okay, so deep breath. We covered everything, I think.
I need 2 minutes to finish creating these issues. Sorry.
No
yeah,
worries.
And I think we should also go through the next epic because there were also a couple stories that were in there, and there's actually a whole epic, a sub epic in that, which I hadn't looked at all, which we also didn't talk about in the RISE.
Which one is that? In here?
Yeah, it's yes, it is the one about Giddily Ruby. There's a sub epic. Yes, remove the Giddily Ruby sidecar. There's a ton of issues in there. Coming from a different team, I think.
Yeah, I would personally. This is clearly something that's being worked on right now.
Right. Yeah.
Is this even something that we need to like take into account for us at this moment?
I have no idea. Like, I'm not sure. To be honest, the first time I looked at that today.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why it is in that epic, and I think you know, that's maybe another thing. Maybe next week, if I have a little bit of time, I'll go through our epics and ask questions about why certain things are where they are. So maybe for the sake of moving forward, can we just leave this for now?
Yeah, sounds reasonable not to like jump into it since there's work is going on, but I think it's in this epic because we expect some improvement in memory, right? So maybe it could happen silently and we'll see something on metrics if it will be finished.
Cool.
But I don't think we should work on it. Yeah, I mean.
Have I? Okay, so 1 second. I think I've lost our epic. Oh, this is the RISE epic, and I needed to. Okay. So, quick question, Matthias, did you add all of the issues that, or the things that we forgot down here?
I added a comment listing those we already have, but there were at least 3 that we don't have issues for yet. So I have not created those yet.
Okay, that's fine, but we can still sort of rank them and add them to our
so these
stack.
first 5 we can just add them to the list. I just didn't want to edit the description while other people do, but those yeah, we can. I think those are valid to be voted on.
Okay, so these here, all of those are essentially not yet accounted for in our existing stack ranking. Is that correct?
Yes, and like there's one that we're already working on, so I'm not sure if it makes sense to vote on it, but
I think it does.
Okay.
Let me just do this. Okay, quick question. As this is a relatively long meeting, do people need a 5-minute break before we continue?
I'm okay either way.
I think it would help for me to finish the issue creation.
Okay, then let's maybe just
to grab the coffee.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. Thank you for going through the issues one by one, though. I think that was quite insightful, at least for me, even though, you know, it makes it a little bit longer. So see you in 5.
See you in 5.
Fabian, do you think that like we should like score these things, like the new ones, like alone, or should we like try to score them together?
Let me share my screen. So I suggest the following. We just do these scores as a group together. I'm just about to add them on all in here and be really swift. And that's probably good enough. You know, it's not about scientific accuracy. We can compare them to the average scores from above. That would be my suggestion, just to kind of get this done now that we're all here. But I'm open to suggestions from the group as well.
I'm fine, whatever. I think we should also add to your list the Puma single.
No, I'm adding all of the remaining things here.
Oh, actually, that epic you just posted, that was the one we just looked at with GitLab Ruby that's already being worked on. So maybe we can just skip that. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it's a bit more more synchronous than often is the case. So thanks for going along.
For the swap documentation issue, I actually created. I didn't. Okay, let me link.
Also, Fabian, could you please add baseline performance one? It's not yet created, but Camille asked me to create.
Sure. We can do baseline.
Okay. I created more. I added.
Okay, I think let's look at this. It's incomplete, but I think that's fine. This is wrong. Okay.
Actually, I added rehaul. Okay, this rehaul running GitLab on constrained environments. I renamed that rehaul documentation for running on GitLab constrained environments. So, okay, it's fine.
I personally found like editing markdown tables quite painful. So
they're really.
I'm thinking maybe during the process we could like edit spreadsheet in Google Docs and then just copy paste it because Matthias mentioned.
It's getting quite unwieldy.
Yeah, because all these columns.
Yes. But I think we
like you can add that in the Google spreadsheet and then like just copy paste it.
Yeah. But I probably can't do that easily now, right? It's like, but it should be fine. This is just rice, right? Plus the same.
I know, but we're gonna have to calculate score by hand.
Yeah,
that's true. Well, I probably should have done this differently.
I actually I copy and pasted that, and I don't know if you're on a Mac, if you use Alfred or something like that. I'm on Linux, but I have something similar. You just copy and paste that into like the search bar, and it will tell you. Don't need a spreadsheet. but yeah.
Okay, I will. Yeah, we have to. Let me think about what to do to.
I have a spreadsheet in the discussion of rice. Which,
just comment. Just comment. I think we can figure out how to quickly copy that in the spreadsheet. Just click comment. I'm just trying to naively copy that.
I think markdown table to CSV should be like quite common.
I would just try to just select the HTML and copy and paste it into Sheets. Like it's usually pretty smart about this stuff.
I was muted. I yesterday did it like just copy preview, yeah, like that, and paste it on Google.
I think it doesn't deal well with empty columns, but just give it a go.
It's not perfect, but it will work. But I think that you can select. You need to select the whole table.
Yeah. By the way, Fabian, here's another life hack. If you type sheet.new in your address line, it will actually take you to that form here.
And I'm learning so much today. Okay,
like
this did not
magic
work.
Domain
no, you didn't select the whole table.
Yes, like you need to select the whole table and then it's gonna copy.
Select from the top, like select the text. Yeah.
Like this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Holy mother of mercy.
Yep.
Cool.
I love Google Sheets. It's so good.
Okay. One second, I'll just do wet wrap. Okay, there we go. Okay, can we do this quickly? JIT impact on performance, reach.
I think it has like, okay.
I mean,
600 or something, because like.
I think, sorry, like, because I think, like, just to align on this, for me, like all of these things that touch the runtime, they affect everyone, right? So I think by definition, that should always be maximum reach, because it literally reaches every user, right?
I'm not sure personally. I
estimated
reach.
Reach.
Reach is something that
which
you will
GitLab
see
user
effect
is not
of.
affected by this? What's that?
You will see effect of, for example, if I know that like, let me find an example.
But
because
it can have high reach and there is an impact. So it can have high reach and low impact on customers.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Because let's say there's a bug in it, then every single GitLab user would be affected, right?
Yeah, so I think if we have something that actually will touch GitLab.com, right, and every single self-hosted instance, the reach is relatively high, but the impact may be negligible, right? And that
the reach depends, because like the first one, I completely agree with Matthias that is like 1000. I think his explanation makes a lot of sense. But like the second one, like Prometheus Metrics integration, it still like impacts everyone, but it doesn't impact everyone in the same sense. Because not everyone has like the very high instances and like very spread. So I'm kind of saying that maybe in the second one, Riha or Prometheus Metrics, the reach is lower, because even though it reaches everyone, but not everyone equally. That's my thinking.
Good point.
Okay, let me just quickly do this. C4 times E4 divided by 4. Okay, so reach impact.
Either it's gonna be great or it's gonna be terrible, but it's investigate. So it doesn't mean enable, it says investigate. So the impact could be awesome or terrible. So I would say somewhere between 1 to 2 from my side.
Let's be conservative and let's give it a 1. And the confidence, it seems, is really low.
Nicola, Matthias, Alexi, can you give your opinion on the impact? Because
no
Sorry,
idea
I'm just bringing
at
up
all.
the table again.
Yeah. Okay. So the confidence here is pretty low. Is that correct?
I mean, investigate confidence in this case means enable and test. So I guess from that point of view, doesn't mean like ship it to the customers. It means evaluate. So I would say that confidence is pretty high. So it's either 0.8 or 1 because it's already done there. We don't have to do
I think the confidence here is like, are we confident that this is actually going to do something? Not that we can enable it or disable it. Like the confidence of that this will have the impact that we think it will have.
Yeah, I'm personally almost convinced it will have an impact. It's a pretty massive change in the way the VM operates. I would be very surprised if we wouldn't see any difference, good or bad.
We just don't know which one exactly.
Okay.
That's why we need to investigate.
Okay, so I'll give it a 0.8 maybe. Effort.
So probably testing when we have like all these QA architecture, it should be pretty straightforward. So I guess something between 1 to 2 to have like this investigated. What do you think?
I had a question about this. How did you go about this when you did your rice voting? Because there's effort in terms of it takes a long time, but it's not actually a lot of work, because just like monitoring something, just letting it sit in production and collect data, it takes longer. It adds kind of lead time more than it does to the final outcome than it does adding work. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not really that I need to spend 8 hours a day looking at this.
I wouldn't overthink it. It's like this is rough, right? If this is going to take 2 months to actually come to a conclusion, or 3 months, then give it that value. It's more about t-shirt size.
No, sure. I'm more wondering. So it's more important about kind of the time to market, like in the sense of like when will we actually have a result, right?
Yes.
Rather than,
I would say yes.
I think this is a great example, because this is just a switch. It's like literally a Boolean toggle. So it's very low effort in terms of development, but it's very high effort in terms of validating that change.
Yeah.
It will take.
But then I think that is like you say, it will take 2 or 3 months maybe to get there.
Yeah, I would say 2 sounds right.
Cool. All right, next one, Prometheus Metrics.
Sorry, what? I'm not sure I understand this issue, to be honest. What does rehaul Prometheus Metrics? Did you mean rework or overhaul, as in like redoing them, or what?
Like figure out how we can make it more optimal. I mentioned like a few aspects exactly why they are suboptimal today, and for example, why it, from the memory perspective, it doesn't scale very well for the big installations running multiple workers. So in this case, like we investigate exactly how we do it and like how we could do it better, because this actually has the amplification impact on the growing memory usage over time. Because we never wipe these metrics when you start counting them until the process restarts. And this is one also of the reasons why the memory usage grows over time of the application, because we have a few buckets of different types of the metrics. And each of these buckets per process requires us to map at least 4 megabytes of the file. It doesn't mean that we map all the pages of that file into memory, but reading that file actually makes us we periodically read all these files every 15 seconds or 60 seconds, depending on the scraping. So it means that if you have 20, let's say 10 workers, each having 4 buckets of the 4 megabytes, and sometimes it's even more because you have more metrics that over this 4 megabytes initial allocation, you're gonna require that amount of the memory. So 4 by 4 by 10, 160 megabytes in this example, at least of the memory to be able to scrape metrics from the shared processes, basically. What I'm saying, like that our Prometheus metrics integration, it's kind of reaching its limits of the scalability from the scraping performance, from the CPU, from the memory usage performance, and like all of these aspects make it not really the greatest.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the explanation.
There is long-standing issue about like reworking this integration, but it's kind of going back and back, and like I think it's like it's no hanging fruit to do it, but it has the impact on the memory that it's gonna be noticeable from our perspective.
But by this issue, rehaul, you mean rework it to eat less memory, right? Or what? Or investigate what?
Anything that results in reduction of the memory. It could be even like saying that initial allocation is not 4 megabytes, but 550 kilobytes. It could be that we periodically try to wipe these metrics from the memory. It could be try to run the upstream library. I don't know what it takes really. Well, probably there's like a few iterations that we could do it better.
I think I would suggest we move a little bit quicker, because otherwise we're not going to be able to finish this. And I think if there is not as much shared understanding, I would vote for the person who has the best understanding can go ahead, and we can always iterate on it later on, right? And get into the details. But I would really like to finish this so we can have a result. Does that sound okay? And I'm not saying the explanation is not valuable or anything. I'm just saying we have 20 more minutes. So, okay, Camille, you have the best understanding. Go for it.
600. It's not. Okay. It's not. Or I don't know. So it's either 600 or 1000, because it actually affects everyone, but not the same. Impact, I would say it would be 2.
Okay. Confidence?
0.5.
Effort? 4. Okay.
It's like it has a lot of uncertainty what to take. Maybe there are smaller iterations, but it's not super straightforward to do it.
Thank you. And you can see, like, this is what I like about it, right? You can really see this reflected in the score already. Okay, extend Omnibus to automatically disable non-essential services. So this is only going to affect those that actually run in a memory constrained environment, correct?
Yeah, so probably like reach is very small. It's like 100 maybe, or maybe smaller.
Impact?
Impact, it makes GitLab maybe usable, so I would say 1 or maybe 2.
Let's be generous. Give it 2. Confidence?
1.
Effort?
Because like it reduces memory. Effort? Probably 1 as well.
Okay. Empty hashes?
Matthias, it's more your topic, I guess.
Yeah. Reach, I would say, again, 1000, because it's like literally the whole app and every user, unless anyone disagrees. Impact, I would say, is smallish. I can't for the life of me remember these weights. Is it like lowest a half? I would say 0.5.
There is 0.25 also, like minimal.
That's minimal, yeah. No, let's keep it a little bit more generous, because it depends on the type of hash, I think, that we're looking at. Confidence, give it a 0.8, because there are definitely open questions, but I think it sounds like there's doable stuff in there. Effort, give it a 1.
Next one, rehaul. So when we say rehaul, we mean rework.
Yes. Am I using with this rehaul word properly, or like...
I don't think it's a word.
I think it is.
I think you mean rework.
I think the word rehaul is fine, but I think rework is maybe a little bit more common and more understandable for poor non-native speakers like myself. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Like it's still like 100 because the reach is like quite limited, right? Okay. Impact. I think we need to do it. So like I would say it's high. So maybe like even 3 or like 2. Confidence. Do we need that? We have some like metrics, so maybe 0.8. Effort, it should take like minimal amount of time, like to rework this documentation. So 1, probably. Like we
can even do like 0.5, right? It's like Unicode emojis. Don't quite know. I don't think we discussed it.
This is really hard to rate, because I think that's up to another team. Basically, it's just we discovered that, I guess, for front-end logic.
Remind me, what was that?
So we have this ginormous hash in memory all the time, which contains a JSON mapping of like Unicode or like shortcuts to Unicode emoji or something. So I don't know, like, I mean, reach should be pretty high because I think it's always in memory for everyone running GitLab. Yeah, it's make it 800, I guess. Impact is quite small because it's also not that massive. Give it 0.25, well, 0.5.
How much memory like it's using?
I think it was 1.5 megabytes or 2 meg or something.
How this amount compares to the duplicate empty hashes?
It was similar. I think it was a bit less. I think it was half of it. Yeah, so I think that makes sense actually. 0.25. Yeah. Confidence. I have no idea. Actually, I have low confidence because there's probably a good reason we keep it in memory. Give it a low confidence. Yeah, sure. Effort. Can't imagine it would be like, I don't know. Yeah, half 0.5. Yeah. Yeah.
Reduce memory impact of GitLab monitoring.
Yeah, so to me, this is kind of the product portion of what Camille discussed above about extend omnibus to automatically disable non-essential features. I think we need to decide what is non-essential and for who.
Okay.
So
then
this is
I
not
would
really
say,
so much in engineering. This is more like for product managers, I think, to look at this and decide.
So I put myself on the spot.
Well, not just you, also monitoring at the other teams.
Yeah. Let's say like the reach is relatively small though, right? Because that is for folks that are running in a memory constrained environment, right? I would say the impact is likely relatively high because you're disabling specific functionality, right?
Yeah.
My confidence in this is probably also relatively high, as in, we expect that to happen, right? The effort, I think this is maybe now, like, let's say, I think the effort here is actually 3, not necessarily in engineering time, but more in getting everybody aligned that this is a good idea and that it's important and that we want to do it, and the discussions and all of that blah blah, right? So that's a 3. Okay, reuse impact, no, drop instrumentation module.
Maybe Nicola can take that one.
Yeah, why not? But okay, so everybody are affected. The impact, if I remember correctly, was really low.
0.5?
Yeah, maybe even lower. The confidence, I think, between 0.8 and 1, because I think it's not used at all, but maybe there are some hidden thing, but I really believe that we are not using it. It is just a leftover from InnoxDB, so I guess it's fine. Do you guys agree? And effort is also low, I would say 0.5, right?
Okay. I could comment on that. So reach will be low, the same as if you put 100 and 100, impact is high, because like for them, it will give room to breathe. Confidence, I would say medium. Medium is 0.10 because an effort is pretty high. I would even put 3 or 4 pessimistic because we have a lot of things like for cluster.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
We have pretty high confidence that this is pretty impactful, right? I mean, didn't we look at this during the 2 gigabyte week?
Medium, I mean 0.8. Yeah, I agree. Like it's not 0.5, 0.8.
And another question, maybe that's more for Camille, but it also came up that in production in Kubernetes we run. Oh wait, or was that for? Maybe I'm confusing it. Maybe I'm confusing it with Sidekick. No, I think it was Puma. We run like a really low number of processes. I don't remember if it was 1 or 2, but because we scale with pods now, is reach or could reach actually be way higher here in the future?
Probably,
really
I'm unsure exactly like in the cloud native you run, but if you run in the single process, then I would say that Puma in the single mode, it actually makes a lot of sense to run there as well.
Yeah, I think it might be interesting to investigate.
Yes, so but I'm kind of curious because this shows like the score is very small, but this was like the biggest impactful thing that we had in the in running in the 2 gig.
That means impact is not that effective in this table, like it
No,
being diminished by other.
I mean like the reach, it's optimized to the general audience. It's not optimized to the 2 gig goal of running on the constrained environment.
Well, I think actually, like I would say that is true, but also it is an interesting question now, right? If you acknowledge that this actually may reach a very small amount of users, right? In comparison to many other users. I'm not saying that's necessarily a problem, but it is an accurate reflection of the impact that it's going to have on GitLab as a whole, right? If you do something for a very small amount of users, you know, because you think that that may still be important, but the reach is still low, right? There may be other reasons to overwrite it, but I still think that's an interesting perspective here, right? If there are 100, you know.
But really the question about the reach is like, and it's the question to you, Fabian, like what I'm kind of like having our optics around. Because like we had this 2 gig week, is our optics on actually being able to run GitLab on the constraint environment, which is like our focus right now, which kind of makes this reach here for the constraint environments be for the Puma in single mode, not 100, because 1,000 it's gonna affect every single small.
So what you're saying is we may need to rescale to say reach within the limit.
I'm kind of saying that maybe we should consider looking at 2 reach, like reach of like the GitLab as a whole, as like
and reach
taking
within
into account like every GitLab installation, but second reach to think about from 2 gig perspective only.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. We can. This is that.
Because like it kind of gives you a very interesting aspect. Like the score is 60, but from the 2 gig perspective, it would be like the first thing probably that we would be working, because it gives like the highest benefit. Really.
But also, is the effort maybe a bit too pessimistic? Why does it take 4 months? That seems like a lot. It's just a piece of configuration we need to change, right? We already measured the impact of this. So
it will be a lot of stuff. Like all CNG omnibus configs are tied up. They're super coupled to like our.
Wait, so CNG was, I mean, okay. I mean, CNG was it's a bit speculative still, right? Because we don't run Puma in single mode and CNG right now.
No, I mean, what I'm afraid of, like maybe we could put 3. I'm fine with 3, but I'm a bit like pessimistic about our callbacks. Many events are coupled towards clustered mode. Many optimization are done on clustered mode. So it will be a bit of a mess in configuration, which I find really struggling to verify.
Cool. Yeah, no, good point. Yeah, thanks.
I agree with Alessio. Like it's like it's gonna take a little time to actually.
Yeah, no,
maybe
cool. Fair point.
Let's leave it like this. And I like the concern in the ranking about local versus global optimization, really. Like how far is it going to get us to this specific goal, right? Versus what is it going to affect globally, right? And that we can maybe think about that. But that's also easier to see when you have the ranking for everything and see, you know, how it actually turned out. So let's do the last 2 things.
I'm kind of thinking that maybe like when we have that list, maybe we should like then asynchronously to Monday.
Yes.
Like,
no, absolutely.
Like, evaluate the reach, looking at the 2 gig versus global, and then kind of like see how this list compares.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I still think this is super valuable because we need to have it first to actually look at it, right? So swap documentation issue.
I actually added that to the documentation in general, so you may just remove that. It's one of the points in the rework of the documentation.
Okay. So discover unused code.
I mean, it reaches everyone because it's gonna reduce memory consumption. Impact, I think it's pretty moderate.
The funny thing is we don't really know how much unused, it's kind of we need to play that story to even know how much unused code there is.
Exactly, so like we don't know really how much we can free, But
the confidence in this as in is actually pretty low because we'd have no idea what it will do.
Yeah.
0.5 probably, or maybe lower.
Coin flip.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
do you think like
one.
the impact of
I think
unused
the impact
code
would
will
also be fairly low. I can't imagine there's a ton of unused code in GitLab. I mean, we have a lot of churn, but I don't know.
Effort.
I think it's
maybe 2. I guess it really depends how you approach that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think kind of well reflects like my perspective compared to other stuff.
Yeah, I think Camille raised a really good point with this local versus global thing, because now thinking back now, because we were not really focused on .com, right? When we did this 2 GB, it was really about, hey, here's a single node 2 GB, user. How can we run GitLab on that? And now we started to reduce reach a lot, like kind of down scoring really like stories that sound really impactful. But we down scored them in reach because they do not affect .com. Yeah, I wonder like.
Yeah, maybe reach is not even
applicable. Did we create a lot of inconsistency now in these scores? Because, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really think about that when I did my rice scoring.
No, me neither. But that's why we can do this as like a global and a local score, for example, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean I really like this because you can have, and I think that may be a balancing in priorities, right, as well. If we have things that are both good for global and local optimization, right, then that's actually really the things we should do first. And then there are some things that are maybe much more impactful for the local goal, right, that we still need to do, but globally they don't matter. That's interesting to flush out as well. Okay, I think there's one last thing.
I mean, like you may simply have a metric that like you pick max of these 2 values and you order by them. So you kind of do like the highly impactful things that gonna impact like the global and local in the end, right?
Yes. I mean, that's the optimization we probably want, right? So, so the last thing we have to do is this baseline performance bit, and then we're going to be done.
I would say it's tricky about reach of these tasks. We've had similar tasks. Sorry to interrupt you. But I'm struggling to put reach on these tasks because we also had a task on mapping features, but you could say reach 1000 and you could say reach 100 because it's developers only. So what's our reach on developer tools? That's my question.
But is baseline performance a developer tools or is it something different?
I would say it's a developer tool because it's only used by us. The user doesn't care if we have this baseline performance in our tool set.
But because I was thinking that like the baseline performance, it's more about like having this constraint architecture part of our reference architectures.
But that's also about us, right? How effectively we work, how effectively we test, how effectively we could verify our improvements. It's not about like user affecting. It's about our speed of work. So it's a very meta kind of task.
Actually, like we had this lengthy discussion on Monday about like gathering as much metrics as possible to see our like the trend of the performance, which may include memory and other aspects. So I think that I agree with you, Alexei. I have also a hard time like to understand.
I think maybe tasks. I think personally, maybe this is just one of those things where, in my mind, maybe this is a radical thought. If we can't measure the baseline of what we're trying to do, then, I mean, what are we like? How are we going to work, right? So it feels to me like a thing that we just must establish at some point, because otherwise, it's a little bit pointless, because like we're changing stuff against an unknown entity, right? So I don't even think we need to rank it necessarily, because it feels like an absolute prerequisite for measuring what we are trying to do, in my mind.
Sounds good.
So,
yes,
that's maybe
right.
The best way of doing it. Okay, so you know, I'm not beholden to like religiously follow these things when they don't make sense. Okay, so let's recap. I think I can't actually easily get the summary table into this right now. Let me try. Issue link. I'll try to do this separately for it, but we can already rank this here, right? And we can look at the top items, and we can look at the other top items. So my suggestion is, because we're out of time, I'm going to make this table in the Google Docs here and share it with the team with the ranking of our items, and then we can make some comments on it. I think we may need another round for sort of reach within the 2G one, and then we need to look at sort of global versus local. But I think what we already have is we have essentially we have scores for everything that we attempt to do, which is a lot, right? There's a lot of stuff going on here. So we should be a little bit careful as to sort of oversubscribing, right? As in, you know, there's a long stack. But I think we can probably come to I mean, we're not blocked, is my understanding. And I think by probably Monday, Tuesday next week, I think we can derive priorities for the epic from this. I think I'm quite confident in that.
Stupid question, but sorry, Matthias, shouldn't the reach be 1000 on every like 2 gig stuff? Because like every issue, when we created it, we had in mind like constraint environment. Just do we need to like assess it? Maybe we should just put one.
I mean, like investigate GT impact on the performance. I would say that on 2 gig it's actually bad because it allocates more memory. So like it's rather opposite in some cases.
But that's reach. I mean, reach is everyone for every issue. Because like all issues were created with constraint environment in mind.
It could still depend on the feature though, right? Because not every single node user might be using the same feature set.
So maybe like it's actually an interesting point. Maybe we need reach and impact.
Do you mean local versus global impact?
Yeah.
Yes, I would say impact will be much more like varied than reach for 2 gigs, in my opinion. Reach, I would probably put 1000 everywhere if you ask me.
Okay, so what you're essentially saying is that because we created all of these issues with the reach being tailored towards the 2 gig initiative, if there is no difference in ranking here. The difference is really between global impact, you know, as in will it impact all of, you know, like will it impact globally, right? Or is this only something that goes into the 2G impact, and that changes, the rest is stable?
Yes, probably yes.
I would like to keep like the reach and impact as coefficients of the local and global. I need to think about the reach myself. If it's 1000 always, or is it not?
Let's think about it. We can do all of that asynchronously. So I would say what I can commit to is I'll get our average scores into this table here as well, and I'll rank by that, and then I'll do that today, and then everybody can actually look at the stack rank and see if they sort of violently disagree with some of the ranking, right? And then we can figure out why that is, right? Because that is also what that teases out. Right? If like our perception is not consistent with this, then we need to maybe think about it, right? But I think we'll have a scoring system in place. And also we have a place where we can keep track of all of those issues, because I would like to put them into one epic with potentially sub-epics so that we know exactly that those are the follow-up steps that we're going to take, because that's important for me, just in order to not lose track of what's going on.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
I had one more thing, if you don't mind.
No, sure.
So one thing that bugs me a bit still is that this one story that got a really low score, I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here, because it already looks like we'll never get to this, but that doesn't make sense to me, because like we have this issue up there, extend omnibus to automatically disable non-essential features or services, which has a much higher score. But we cannot even do that story until we decide what is non-essential. And I don't think it's our place to decide that. So we need to do all this product work to decide what is non-essential, to actually, because that's just implementation work. So to me,
I think that's also fair. There may be some cross dependencies here that we have to tease out, right? This is, so just to take a step back, right? This is not the solution to all of our problems, right? As in figuring out some of the dependencies, and this, it's a toolkit to take a long list of stuff and get some relative ranking, and also facilitate some discussion, right? Because I think what we've seen here is that maybe on some things we have no common understanding on why we're trying to do that, right? Or who this is for. And I think that's actually also really, really important, right? And that helps do this. So there's more benefit than the scores, because you need to talk about it, right? And I think that is in its own right pretty important.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, all I wanted to say was I don't think we should just dismiss things outright just because they got a low score.
I think
yes.
No, that's perfectly true, but it's important to write that down and say, this has a low score, these are the reasons for this, but this is the reason why we decide to do it anyways, right? Because that's something to document, right? So that when people come and ask, we have an answer to it, right? And I think that is important. And this is why having these things sort of ahead of time is really nice. Anyways, thank you for doing this. I think this was maybe a little bit new for some folks. I hope it was useful, and we are not done with it, but I think it was at least for me, I learned a lot. It was probably one of the longest synchronous sessions I had in GitLab, so that's exciting. It felt almost like being in a room with a whiteboard, which I actually really like. So yeah, also, if you have any feedback regarding this, right? Maybe we can do it. I'll actually post in the channel, right? Like for sort of a mini live retro, just to say, you know, how can we improve? What should we have done? So that we learn from this. Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Fabian, for putting this together. And very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Fabian. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Enjoy your Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday, guys.
Yeah, happy Friday.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.